Good morrow, Tottenham fans, and there's every reason for you to get up with a joyous smile on your face this morning because Tottenham are back, baby, and I cannot wait. Pre-season officially gets underway tonight as we take on Hearts at 7 p.m. And with that game on my mind this morning, it's got me thinking about forgotten players who no one is talking about that have an opportunity to be able to convince Ange Postecoglou that they don't need another loan move and that they can be part of his plans this season. Only two players on my list today, and the first on that list is Ashley Phillips, who of course spent the second half of last season out on loan at Championship side Plymouth. Phillips eventually joined Spurs from Blackburn on the 5th of August last season for a fee of $3 million after Spurs tried to do a deal for Ashley Phillips the window beforehand. Now, arriving on the 5th of August last season, it gave Phillips very little opportunity to make any impact or any real impression on Ange Postecoglou, and also did not afford Ange Postecoglou himself to be able to have a look at Ashley Phillips in an environment where there are no real repercussions. Phillips, who appeared on the Tottenham bench 7 times last season, Postecoglou had the opportunity to be able to use him, especially with injuries to Romero and Van de Ven. However, elected to go with two fullbacks, Ben Davies and Emerson Royal instead. And then come January, Spurs only had Premier League games to focus on as they were knocked out of both domestic cups, which meant game time was very limited for those in backup roles. That, with the arrival of Radu Dragusin, it pushed Ashley Phillips further down the pecking order. And then the decision was eventually made to loan him out to Championship side Plymouth in order to get the game time that he needed to be able to develop. However, this summer, as it stands, Ashley Phillips is Tottenham's only fit and available centre-back, especially for the next 2 games at least against Hearts and QPR, with Radu Dragusin, Christian Romero and Van de Ven all on holiday after taking part in international competitions over the summer. And also, Alfie Dorrington is still recovering from the surgery he had to correct the hamstring injury that he suffered on under-21 duty against Liverpool towards the back end of the campaign. This presents Ashley Phillips with a golden opportunity that even he couldn't dream of to be able to impress on Ange Postecoglou that he doesn't need to go into the market and bring in another centre-back this summer, that given the opportunity, Phillips can earn that trust, fill that void, and be Tottenham's 4th centre-back heading into this campaign. Now, there are 2 areas where I feel like if Ashley Phillips can excel in, he can leave a long-lasting impression on Ange Postecoglou this pre-season, one of which is aerially. As it stands, we have a very small squad in terms of height, especially that starting 11. Aerially is one of the weaknesses that was exposed time and time again last season. We're very weak in the air, which leads us not being able to compete. So Phillips can come in and command our area from defensive set pieces and also crosses into the box. I think it'll certainly help Tottenham solve an issue in the long run and definitely give Ange Postecoglou some food for thought. The second is to show that he's comfortable in possession, being able to handle the ball and being able to move it forward. When you look at Romero and Van de Ven, they're both very comfortable in possession and are often seen getting involved in Tottenham's attacking moves. So I feel like that Ashley Phillips has to be able to show that he can push that ball into the midfield regularly and also show variation of passing rather than just taking the safe option every single time. Because you've got to remember, it's pre-season. That's not enough just to show that you can do the basics in possession. You have to be able to excel beyond that. And for me, if he can excel in those 2 areas, I don't see any reason why Ange Postecoglou wouldn't consider keeping Ashley Phillips around as a 4th centre-back and using that money elsewhere in the window to be able to strengthen his squad where it'll have a massive impact in terms of on the starting 11. The second forgotten player on my list today is Argentinian striker Alejo Veliz, who of course arrived at Spurs from Rosario Central on the 8th of August 2023 on a 6-year contract for a fee of $13 million. Now, first of all, arriving on the 8th of August gave Veliz absolutely very little time to be able to settle into the club and get used to Ange's requirements of what he requires his striker to be able to carry out within his tactics, which is never ideal and even harder when you're a 19-year-old kid coming from a foreign country, into a new culture, and also into a new club. It's not an ideal situation for you to be able to hit the ground running and showcase what you can bring to the team. However, Ange did play Veliz a number of times between August and September, with Veliz making 8 appearances in total, scoring 1 goal before he ended up suffering that unfortunate injury from a hospital pass by Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. And then, of course, the old box-ticking exercises of Tottenham Hotspur came into play as Dane Scarlett was recalled from his loan at the end of December because he wasn't getting the game time that Ipswich initially promised when they came looking for Dane Scarlett on loan, which then meant the club had to go and find a move for Veliz because they did not want to stunt Will Lancashire's progress that he was making in the under-21s. And it's just not good practice or ideal having 2 players very similar to each other in terms of experience and age in Dane Scarlett and Valise, both competing for the very little minutes off the bench. Also added to the reason because Dane Scarlett had played the Carabao Cup game against Fulham earlier on in the season before he was loaned out to Ipswich. Then, of course, I think he made 12, 13 appearances for Ipswich, all off the bench as well. It then meant that when Dane Scarlett did return in January, Tottenham couldn't loan him out to another club because FIFA rules state you cannot play for 3 clubs within one season. So it meant the club's hands were tied. They couldn't send Scarlett anywhere, which meant Valise then had to be the one to make way. Valise was then loaned off to Sevilla, and weirdly enough, he was actually used in a standoff between the manager at the time and the owner, a bit like the Jed Spence and Antonio Conte situation we had at Tottenham 2 seasons ago. When Conte asked for another established right-back to be brought into the club decided they'd go and bring in someone like Jed Spence, and Conte didn't want him because he was young and unproven, and he wanted proven players, and he didn't use him because ultimately the club went behind his back and didn't bring in what he was asking for, and Valise found himself in the very exact same situation at Sevilla, I think playing 10 minutes in total across the second half of the campaign. So a loan move that didn't work out and would have largely frustrated Valise, because at the end of the day, as a footballer, there's absolutely nothing you can do in that situation. You can go in there, you can train your ass off banging the goals. If the manager's sticking by his guns and refuses to play you to make a point, there's nothing you can do. So it becomes very, very frustrating for a player. But with Richarlison's fitness and availability still up in the air for these upcoming friendlies, it gives Alejo Valise a golden opportunity, whether that's leading the line from the off or coming off the bench, to be able to make a big impact and convince Ange Postecoglou that he deserves the game time that will be on offer over the course of this season. It's also worth noting that the plan is currently to try and loan out Will Lancashire in order to be able to continue his development. So there will be an opportunity for Valise to be able to do a hybrid where he fills in for the senior team when called upon, but also in order to keep him match sharp and keep him fit while he's waiting around for that opportunity, there should be minutes for him in the under-21 squad this season, as he's still only 20 and can still technically play for them. It's also a massive opportunity for Valise to be able to show that he's levels above Dane Scarlett, who is of similar age and similar experience as well, to put him ahead in the pecking order. And with a full pre-season underneath Valise's belt this time around, if he can use last year's pent-up frustration and be able to channel it into his football, he has every chance of being able to be kept around and be part of Ange Postecoglou's plans this summer, because we have to remember there's going to be a lot of game time. We're in 4 competitions next season, which means you're going to need more than Richarlison and Son to be able to fill in up front at times. So there will be opportunities along the line for Valise, and if he can take them, them opportunities become a lot more frequent. And especially if Spurs don't sign anybody this summer, it opens the door for someone like Valise to be kept around and get an opportunity and hopefully seize on it when it comes. But I must also stress, when it comes to Valise, it's not that simple. He could come in, hit the ground running and bang in goals. It still doesn't mean the club are going to keep him around, because as we know, box-ticking exercises come into play. As it stands, Valise doesn't actually need to be registered for Tottenham to be able to meet the Premier League criteria, as he still qualifies as an under-21 product, and they don't need to be registered on the squad list. However, this is where it gets complicated. For Europe, for the Europa League campaign, he will have to be registered as one of the 25 players in the squad registration, with no leniencies towards him being an under-21 player where he doesn't need to be registered, which makes it complicated. And that's where, because Dane Scarlett is homegrown, if he can perform well or to any sort of decent standard, it might actually give him a leg up in the pecking order, because he will meet criteria on that European list. So I do stress, although Valise could hit the ground running, there's still an opportunity he could be loaned out because of the criteria needed to meet both European and Premier League squad registrations. So guys, they're 2 players that I picked out that were farmed out on loan last season. They're almost forgotten about. There's barely any mention in them heading into this pre-season. And I think these are players that might just surprise you and could end up solving a headache somewhere along the line for Ange Postecoglou and hopefully fans this season. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is there any other forgotten players at Tottenham that you think might surprise us over the course of this pre-season? And I'll see you back here at 5 o'clock for the pre-match show, and also followed by the watch-along. Guys, smash the like button. We're back. Come on, you Spurs. In the mighty Ange we trust.